Hello and welcome back to Feel No Shame. We're back for a one-off special episode, maybe another series to come, but we need to sort that out and organise it. But yesterday myself and Al got together to record this special one-off episode with, originally it was supposed to be just Dean Chard. Dean, I say just Dean Chard, he's an important guy. So I used to work with Dean about 10 years ago, for a few years actually, in a supporting capacity. Dean has cerebral palsy, and I used to help him out a little bit with that. And he became a listener to the first series of Feel No Shame. First series available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can get podcasts from. So Dean listened to the first series, enjoyed it, gave us some lovely feedback. Thank you very much. And I asked him if he would want to be a guest on a future episode. He was a little bit hesitant and a little bit reluctant. I just wanted to hear his story, really, because something that myself and Al found really valuable about the first series was giving people a platform to tell their stories. So I thought that would be a good thing to hear Dean's story too. But what also entered into my mind at that time was the fact that we used to communicate, myself and Dean, to a professional wrestler in the United States of America, Cleveland, Ohio, a man named Gregory Iron. As well as being a professional wrestler, Greg is now a speaker, a motivational speaker. And we reached out to him before he started doing that, just because Gregory also has cerebral palsy. Dean has cerebral palsy. Dean likes wrestling. Gregory Iron is a wrestler, and so the pieces kind of slot into place. And I messaged Greg just out of the blue, just to say, Dean's going to be on our podcast. Would you like to sort of pop in and say hello? Now that we can do it on Zoom. And he said yes, which was a big surprise to me, not because I didn't think he would want to do it. He's a really nice guy and he has a lot of interesting stories himself to tell. I was just surprised that he was so accommodating to us, and he agreed to not only just say hello, but also to tell a bit of his story too, and answer some of our questions and some of Dean's excitable questions, as you'll come to watch and listen during the episode. So we didn't tell Dean that Greg was going to be on the show as well. He kind of suspected it at one point, and I managed to sort of ward him off and say that Greg was a bit busy, and that maybe we could do it in the future. And so, I mean, you'll see and hear for yourself, but Dean's reaction is beautiful, and it really made all of our days. So we hope that you enjoy it too. Doing this intro hopefully to make it less clunky than the intro that we did live, because I was a little bit nervous because I haven't done it in a while. Maybe this one is as clunky. But anyway, thanks to Greg, thanks to Dean, thanks to Al, and thanks to you for listening. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to Feel No Shame. This is either season 2 or a one-off episode. I'm just waiting for Al to join me. And he's here because we're in the same room.
Sorry if that was a bit loud. Sorry if that was a bit loud. But yeah, we're in a conservatory.
In Wiltshire.
No rude daubings behind us.
No.
That's my son's drawing pad.
Yes.
Perfect circle. You alright?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Still fat.
Come on now.
But I've started doing jiu-jitsu.
Today?
Yeah. It's on the legs and the hips.
What do they call it? A lesson or a session?
Session.
Bout?
Session, and they do something called it's Brazilian. They don't do a Brazilian in front of me or anything like that. They don't do that. But it's sessions, and yeah, it's good fun. All in the hips.
Good.
And they don't lie.
Absolutely not, and they shouldn't. Yeah.
You're right.
Just a little bit nervous actually, because we haven't done this for a little while. So even though it is literally just talking and talking to you, which I do all the time, there's still a touch of the nerves.
It's a special one.
It is a special one. We have a special guest today. So this is a young man named Dean, who is 25 years old, an aspiring podcaster, wants to do a podcast on wrestling and movies. So if there's a market for that and anybody is interested, after listening to his story today, then get in touch with us. But I've known Dean for a little while, and you've just met him. First impressions?
I think he is a funny guy.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He's a lovely guy. And we're just two men. Three men, but two men at the moment. Two normal men.
Just hanging out.
Two innocent men.
How do you think, off the back, and this is just a little ad-libby bit, but how do you think the first series went?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, we got some good feedback. I need to remember that when I move, I leave the shot. I will also be reaching over at times to do the trackpad on this Mac and stuff. But yeah, no, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. We got some good feedback.
Yeah.
And it's good to be doing it together now rather than on separate screens.
I think I got ahead of myself because I thought, oh yeah, we can get celebrities on now because we're on Spotify. And I messaged who did I message? Tyson Fury. Nothing.
Busy.
Too busy.
Doing a different podcast, maybe.
Probably. I messaged True Geordie. Nothing.
I don't know what that is.
He's a guy that's a Geordie.
Okay.
And he does a good podcast. I thought because he's gone through suicidal tendencies, or his mate was actually followed through with suicide. So I thought I could talk to him. He's up there. He wouldn't want to talk to us.
Well, we're very fortunate to have people who do want to talk to us and do have very interesting stories.
That's right.
As well.
That's right.
Now
we're giggling.
Yeah.
Because another person has entered the chat. Do we say what's happening?
Well, what we can do is actually let him in and talk to him for a little bit, and just let him know the score.
Yeah. Because this is another person that Rowan, over a chat between ourselves, just went, yeah, I've got him. I was like, what? So yeah, if you're a fan of wrestling and a fan of the indie circuit, the indie scene, then this is a podcast for you, dear listener. Anyone heard of Gregory Iron? Well, he potentially will be with us very shortly.
Yeah, he's stuck on the M5.
Yeah,
not really. He is here. He's in the waiting room. But what I'm going to do is let him in, and I'll see what happens. Yeah, so I can unmute a little bit actually, and I can see what happens. I'll see if he says hello. Hello.
Hello.
Here we have. Now, do I call you Greg Smith or Gregory Iron or Greg Iron? What would you like to be known by?
You can call me Gregory Iron. I'm trying to get the video to start. I don't know what the problem is here.
I have banned you from video.
Oh, gotcha.
Make sure that I'll try and get the video on. Maybe I can't do that. But yeah, we've got Dean in the. There you go. We've got Dean in the waiting room, and we're just going to leave him there for a little bit. We're just doing the intro now, so we can hear you but can't see you. But that's okay at the moment.
Cool.
So yeah, we're going to start talking to Dean in a minute, and he has no idea that you're coming. I've sort of fobbed him off and said that you were busy, and said that maybe we'll set something up in the summer. I started rambling and just said we can do it in the summer because the nights are lighter.
I thought you handled it fantastic. You weren't shaking.
No, I wasn't shaking at all. I'm a little bit nervous, Greg, because we've never actually spoken before. We've emailed and communicated that way, but I've never properly met you. So it's an honor.
Yeah, it's an honor to be a part of this, and I can't wait to talk about everything. And there's no reason to be nervous because I'm just a dude, and you're a dude, and we're all dudes, so it'll be fun.
We absolutely are. And this is Alan. I should introduce Alan.
Hello, how are you doing?
Nice to meet you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I think I still recall the summer of punk that when WWE ruined it, and he went to visit and he said that you were effing awesome.
Yeah,
rightly so. and just following a bit of your career, it's an inspiration. So yeah, thank you very much for this.
I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me. I just I really lucked out with that moment and a lot of other moments, and I'm happy that I could bring a little bit of inspiration to people through my story, which I don't realize how inspiring it is to others because I lived it. So it's still very strange to me to this day, but it's cool that other people can find motivation in my story.
Damn right, absolutely.
And so I've got a sneaky T-shirt on that you.
I see that.
I'm going to see if Dean notices. He hasn't noticed yet when we were doing a bit of an intro with him. And so, and he's going to see your picture, and I'm going to say, Alan's put the picture up as a joke.
Yeah.
And he'll fall for it hook, line, and sinker because he's a trusting guy. But
Love it.
he'll be very excited when we do introduce you. And I'll explain to the listeners and viewers a little bit more about Greg and how we came to get in touch with each other when we're talking to Dean. So,
yeah.
Any other business, or shall we get Dean back in?
I think the AOB is done. I think we're ready to go. So we'll see you very shortly, Greg. See you in a bit.
Sounds good.
So, Dean, lovely to have you on the Feel No Shame podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. So, I have known you for how long?
11 years.
11 years.
11.
11. I think it might be 12. I'm not sure. Or maybe 10. But 10, 11, 12, something like that. But yeah, I've known you since you were a wee man, and we used to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to work with you in a school, and since then, you've kind of been updating me on your progress and on your life, and you found our podcast, our lovely podcast, and I think I asked you to be on it because I've never really heard your story, even though we've spent a lot of time together doing various different activities. I've never heard your story, and we've never had a really deep conversation. So I'm hoping that we can have that today, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Lovely stuff. And you've asked me to say that you smile when you get nervous.
Yeah.
You laugh like a seal.
Yeah.
And you are single.
Yeah.
and and you were a little bit nervous about your speech being on the podcast as well. From where we are, it sounds crystal clear. And if it's okay, then if we ask you a question, I can maybe just paraphrase and repeat your answer, if that's okay. Tell me if it gets annoying.
Yeah. I'm never getting annoying.
Well, you never know. I think I probably could. Challenge accepted. Cool. So we're good to go. You've got your Pepsi?
Yeah, Pepsi makes
Fantastic.
70 food.
Yeah, so you are, we should get it out of the way now. You're a big wrestling fan.
Yeah. Most of this podcast will be wrestling related.
Yeah, you want to do a podcast that's wrestling related?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? I plugged it in the intro. So if anyone's listening who wants to give you a platform, then it's right there for you.
For the purposes of Rowan just tapped me on the shoulder, on the knee. We've got questions. We have questions for you, Dean.
Yeah.
Should I do the first one?
Alan's phone is just out of shot,
Yeah.
so it looks like I'm just down there, but it is his.
Not there.
It is his.
The microphone.
Phone's up there.
Phone's there. So do you want me to start? Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Because the first question, and all these questions are from Rowan. I've just okayed them. Don't know what yet. But you've recently just recovered, or you're recovering from the dreaded COVID. I myself have had it. You've had it. Literally, nearly everyone's potentially had it. But how are you feeling? How are you getting on?
I'm feeling fine. I didn't get any side effects from it.
No third arm, no horse's head or anything like that.
No.
That's good. Good. That's no side effects. It's brilliant.
Yeah, because I suppose you come under the vulnerable category.
Yeah. most of my family does as well.
Most
I
of
mean, all added in
Yeah.
within a week.
Wow, so you must be superhuman. You were born with cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
You still have cerebral palsy, I should say.
No, take a vision.
You describe what it means to you, or maybe describe to the listeners and viewers who don't know what it is.
Cerebral palsy, the autism affects the brain.
Condition that affects the brain.
For me, I'm in a wheelchair for life.
You're
So,
in a life.
yeah, it will get annoying.
It will get annoying. Let me give you a bit longer.
Some famous people with CP includes Walter White's son in Breaking Bad. Yeah. Other person at the top of your screen. The viewers can see it, but Gregory Iron. Small amount of people know of him, but me won't know him personally. He's a professional wrestler.
So we've got some famous people with cerebral palsy include Walter White's son in Breaking Bad, and a wrestler named Gregory Iron, who we might end up speaking about later on, actually, when we talk a little bit about how I know you. But yeah, so to you, you're in the wheelchair. As far as I understand, it's to do with a lack of oxygen getting to certain parts of the brain at birth. Is that right?
Yeah.
And growing up, what was it like for you?
Really hard, because I told you a couple of days ago, I tried to kill myself because having out is going out, bad sex, and stuff like that. I couldn't.
But growing up, it was really hard for you because you'd look around, you'd see everyone else, all your friends going out, having sex, and for you, it would be really hard to. And so you
Yeah,
tried to kill yourself
in school,
in school.
in year 11. Yeah, a really hard year for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, year 11 is just when you're about to leave school as well. So you've been in this place for 5 years. You've been in school at that point for 14 years? No, 12.
GCSEs as well,
Yeah.
going through.
I'm out back here.
Yeah. It's gonna cause some issues. I mean, that and obviously growing up as a teenager as well. So all the hormones, all the emotions that you're going through, it's not surprising that those thoughts came up.
Growing up, only have a mum and dad to speak to. I can speak to it. Sorry, Mr. Rowan. I can speak about that kind of stuff because it's not popular back in 2014. I think a couple of years ago, it's like suicidal, like outreach. It's getting popular. I like it.
Yeah, so growing up back then, that was around about 2014, I think you said.
Yeah.
So you only really had your mum and dad to talk to.
Yeah.
It was difficult to talk to friends about this kind of thing. Difficult to talk in general because it wasn't as I suppose it had more of a stigma back then than it does now, and so you quite like
Yeah.
to speak freely and openly about feeling suicidal back then.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that that's what you were going through back then.
But adding to your point, people like you go to football, you go to family, me, it's a WWE and movies. I'll go for there.
Yeah, so growing up, I suppose mainstream interests are more like football, music, I don't know, the things like that. Whereas you had quite
Oh yeah, music.
niche interests, which included wrestling and movies.
As we bonded over wrestling, me and you.
Did, yeah.
We did. We will come to that story because it's quite a funny story. I think the first time we met. I think Alan wants to ask you another question.
I do. Movies. Talk to me about movies, Dean. What's your favourite genre? What's your favourite genre of movie?
Oh,
All of them.
Horror.
Oh, horror. Sorry, horror. A great one to watch. I don't know if you, because I watched it last night. Choose or Die. That's a good film. That's a good.
as a Netflix movie for people who don't know horror.
It's on there.
It's got main character from sex education.
I love it.
Sorry, my YouTube was sorry to come around.
Have you watched it yet?
No.
I won't spoil it for you. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a scene that he's in, and yeah, it's gruesome. So enjoy. So yeah, that's fun.
Not for me.
No, you're not a fan.
No, I'm not really into the horror movies, but each to their own.
Yes.
Growing up,
You like Super 8.
I do like Super 8. Wow, that's going back a
That's
long
a good
time.
film.
Yeah, check out Super 8, everybody.
Yeah, good film.
Going back to when you were growing up, what kind of support would you have appreciated back then? I don't know too much about what kind of support there is for people with CP. I wonder if you could let me know.
It's like early 2000s. Only nothing. As Westpoint has said. And a social worker. Now, there's loads of support for disabilities.
Yeah, so you were just before the increase in the amount of support, I suppose. So for you, there wasn't too much. You had respite, which was somewhere you went every so often just to stay.
That's to happen to this day.
And you had a social worker.
Yeah.
But again, not too many avenues to go to with any suicidal thoughts or
No. They send me to a psychotherapist back in school because there's nowhere to go.
And how did you
No,
find the
there's
therapy?
nowhere like counseling or a proper people to talk to.
How did you find the therapy that you got sent to? Was it good for you?
No, in a way, too babyless. Babyish.
Too baby.
Yeah.
See, that's what we always boil down to, isn't it? As we've spoken about, they've got the 0 to 5 years sorted in a way, in state education and state support. But it's the teenage years that I still feel there's a lack of information. However, things are developing. But what you know now then, Dean, and what support you're able to obtain now, what would you say to your younger self? This is the question that I always say. You get in that time machine and you go back to your younger self. With the feelings that you had as your younger self, what would you say to yourself, like from your point of view now to your younger self?
About suicidal thoughts or in general?
Maybe a little bit of both, about what you would say to yourself with regards to feeling suicidal and in general.
Yeah.
If 25-year-old Dean could meet 15-year-old
Yeah.
Dean, what would he say?
One of the freeway. Stop being David. Be more like Dean. Remember that what you used to say to me?
Stop being like
David.
David,
It's like my alter ego, my anger side. You used to tell me.
the dark side of Dean.
Oh, so you've got
Yeah.
an alter ego. So an alter ego. That's amazing. Does he come out at night, or did he come out at night? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm an angry man. I'm still am. But in school, I used to get in trouble all the time.
And that was your protection. in a way, wasn't it? That was your protection. That was your comfort. That's what got you through. But yeah, don't be stupid and listen to David. Okay. I like that. Don't be stupid.
That's what I'm saying,
I remember it well. So David would step in and keep people away from you. David would be the angry side of you, your heel persona. And
It's like a demon. The thin better go demon. Go David.
So your demon version of you was David. And the advice you'd give to yourself now would be just be yourself. Don't be David, be Dean.
And don't hang up on like pornographic stuff or sex. Be yourself when it goes.
Yeah. So don't regret anything. Don't focus too much on the things that you can't do or can't have. Just focus on what you can do and who you are, because who you are is a nice chat.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So for kids listening or speaking, yeah, and the appeal is social media or websites you can go on now. It's your time to be yourself, time to make friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you're saying to the younger generation, the millions
And
Millions.
of younger people listening to this, that now's not the time to obsess and focus on social media and comparisons. Now's the time to be yourself, to make friends, to get out there, to make a difference in the world. Do you know what that's just lovely to hear.
that's beautiful.
And I was going to ask you, sort of what keeps you going? What gives you? Because I suppose we all need a sense of purpose. And one of the reasons we're doing this podcast now is to give ourselves more of a sense of purpose, to help out some people and to listen to stories. But what gives you a sense of purpose and what keeps you going?
My family, my friends like you. Life in general. Lockdown was terrible. I thought I'd never get rid of lockdown. And one day, August 2021, I think to myself, it's gonna be okay. Entertainment, theatre, weekend.
So you really struggled in lockdown,
Yeah,
but in general, your family keep you going. Life itself keeps you going. It's a really nice answer. And you mentioned CM Punk, a wrestler, and so wrestling keeps you going as well.
yeah, more so in lockdown than anything. Because world shutdown, cinema shutdown. Doesn't mean, yeah, it's open.
Everything shut down, but wrestling carried on. And do you know what? There's something I've never actually asked you. Is what you like most about wrestling?
It's like EastEnders on steroids.
I could not have said it better myself. EastEnders on steroids. That is it. That is done. That's it. That's the quote of the day.
So what I'm getting from that is that you like the drama. You
Yeah.
like the drama and the muscles.
Yeah. Big sweaty.
More,
Which is actually, we call ourselves drama and the muscles.
Big sweaty man.
That's our ship name.
We're gonna say something else there.
If I could, Dean, if I could tell the story of how we met, because I think it's quite a good one.
our met team talk. Take
Yeah.
away.
So how
He's introducing you. See? Another presenter.
how I met Dean Chard was I'd come straight out of university and struggled to find a job that I liked. I ended up working in a pub for about 4 months. Tried to start a union in the time that I was in there, and then left. Yeah, I wasn't happy with how things were, and so I tried to agitate a bit of a rebellion, and it didn't really work. And so I just left that place. And then I went to work in a tutoring centre with little kids and absolutely loved it because I could just tell jokes and be a bit silly, and obviously help them with their maths and English at the same time.
Absolutely.
And then that led me into working in a school, and it was the job description was working with a 13-year-old boy, I think you were at the time, with additional needs. And so I didn't even know about the cerebral palsy. I just knew you needed a bit of extra help. And so I turned up, and there was just me and this one other guy for the interview. He was quite a young guy. And I did all the interview process. I answered all the questions. What's your biggest weakness, Rowan? My biggest weakness is just I'm too brilliant, and that kind of stuff. And then I was introduced to you, and so I walked into this tiny little classroom. It was a bit like a big cupboard, and there's this big 6'4", 6'5" man from Derbyshire with dreadlocks, Ben Jackson, who is now one of my dearest friends.
Hi, Ben.
And next to him in this walking frame, so sort of a standing frame where you were essentially being stretched vertically. So you were stood up and you turned around like that and looked at me at the door as if I just made the worst possible smell coming in. The face you gave me, who is this coming in? And I think you were probably a bit nervous, and I was a bit nervous. And I sat on this little bench and I watched Ben do some physio on you. And the two of you were talking. And at that time, I couldn't really make out what you were saying because I didn't know you very well. And so I was just trying to, catch whatever word I could. And I was probably doing the terrible thing where I just went, yeah, and pretended I knew what you were saying.
Many people do that.
Many people do that. So I still feel bad, but maybe I'm in good company. But there was one phrase that stood out, and it was when you said Eddie Guerrero, who is a wrestler. I think I might have said it first because I remember you turning to me as if you'd won the lottery and just said, Eddie Guerrero? There wasn't an echo. I've made that bit up. And then I knew that the best way to sort of work with you and help you out was by talking about wrestling first. All the time, essentially, because I couldn't stop you. And so everything was about wrestling. And then at one point, I remember going home and reading about this professional wrestler named CM Punk, who is a bit of a rebel himself. One of the best wrestlers of all time, and he's quite mainstream. And just by sheer coincidence, just after I'd met you, a young man with cerebral palsy, I saw CM Punk on Twitter, I think, on a video. He'd gone to visit another young man with cerebral palsy, a wrestler named Gregory Iron, who CM Punk was in the ring with. Greg, I don't know, but Greg had just put on another great match and another great spectacle and had earned the acclaim of the crowd. And CM Punk, this big star, came in and gave Greg the rub and bigged him up. And I remember printing it off or copying the link and showing you the next day. And then I said, hey, we should email this guy and see if he'll talk to you. And I wasn't really expecting anything because this guy's in America and we were just in a tiny school in Bristol. And he actually did reply to you, I think. And I think we may have spoken to each other a few times. Do you want to pick the story up here?
Yeah, it was AAW to the CM just won the WWE Championship among a bank. He was seeing his friend AEW Doug Older member Gold Cabana. He Gold could see him out. And he said, sorry everyone, you're fucking awesome.
I remember that.
So Dean just swore on the podcast because CM Punk came out and said to Gregory Iron, You're fucking awesome. And Dean, you're looking at the screen a little bit unusually.
I heard a curse word, and I was like, I can't believe that's come out of Dean's mouth. When I hear the F word, I just pop out of nowhere. It's crazy.
That was incredible.
It's really good to meet you. We might need to give Dean a minute. Dean looks overwhelmed in a good way.
Whoa. Are you crying, Dean?
I love you.
What? Oh my.
You're my favorite wrestler of all time.
Wow. I mean, you don't have to lie to me just because I'm on the podcast now. I appreciate that, though.
Oh, I'm actually going now. Lovely.
Yeah,
I'm so happy to.
Dean, if you're crying, you're not the only one.
No, honestly, that was beautiful. Could have planned that better myself.
Tell you what, we'll mute ourselves and you two can have a little chat. We'll just watch for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm getting you because you were part of the story as well.
Okay, I will unmute myself by popular demand. Dean, how are you feeling?
Like Rico Congo with his baby boy. Looking awesome.
You can't stop swearing now, it's great.
So I think what you said then was like Johnny Gargano with his baby boy.
Yeah.
So you are saying that Gregory Iron is like your baby.
Wow.
No, he's like a wrestling baby.
Your wrestling baby.
Sorry. So, pardon my interruption.
So we lied to you, Dean, as well, because we said that we'd asked Gregory Iron if he could be on the podcast, and he said no. And so I lied to you and said that the surprise that I planned was just a signed card that I'd given you. You have some fans coming in and out of the room. And so,
Everyone saying Gregory Iron was a catfish for 11 years.
Gregory Iron was a catfish for 11 years. That's what you believed.
Yeah, nope. I'm a real guy. And actually, I don't know. I was really looking forward to this because, after that moment with CM Punk, a lot of interesting doors opened for me that I could have never imagined. Financially, things got better for me as a wrestler. But what I learned more importantly was with shining a light on my story that a lot of people that would be inspired by what I've gone through would begin to reach out to me. And one of the first people was Rowan with your story, Dean. And I will always cherish that because, 2011, the internet is still becoming a more widespread thing, but it's like you don't realize, I think with social media, people sort of take for granted how tiny the world is now. But back in 2011, it felt like, wow, like someone from the UK has heard my story and this kid wants to write to me and he's gone through some similar things that I've gone through. And I was pumped at the opportunity. If I remember correctly, Rowan, I don't think you emailed me directly. I think you might have reached out to Joe Dombrowski of Prime Wrestling and Joe Ford.
I think
Yeah, Prime Wrestling, PWO. And Joe forwarded the email to me. I want to say this might have been like August or September of 2011. And you guys wanted my address because you guys wanted to do snail mail, back when people actually sent letters in the mail. And somewhere I've got to dig them out. I still got those letters today. And I was jumping at the opportunity to communicate with you because of you, Rowan, and because of you, Dean, I really started to realize the true power of my story and the reason to be a professional wrestler. When I started, you mentioned, because I was listening to the whole conversation, my name's not really Al Yoshi, as we put on the screen. I was a very angry young man. Much like you, I'm still kind of angry at times, and I have a chip on my shoulder. But you grow and you change, and you have life experiences, and I think it's okay to sometimes hold on to that anger as a reminder of where you came from, so you can appreciate where you are right now. But being the angry young man that I was back in the day, I wanted to get into wrestling to prove people wrong. Anybody who ever made fun of my disability or told me that I couldn't do something, I wanted to throw it back in their face. And when I started to become a wrestler and have matches and share locker rooms with my heroes, I wanted to be able to tell them, I told you so. But it was because of your story, Dean, and you communicating with me that I started to realize that the bigger picture was to be vulnerable, be open and honest, share what I've been through so that people like yourself could see that there was someone out there like you. And it's funny that it took your situation to help me see that, because, you look back in hindsight, I don't even become a wrestler until I see Zach Allen, who I'm sure, Dean, you remember from WWE back in 2003.
And your food reviewing boy him of so freaking pissed off.
Yeah.
And Guns was destroyed.
Yeah. Like, I'm so fortunate that now we're friends and we've been tag team partners. But when I saw Zach, it was the first time in my life that I thought I could be a wrestler, because I saw someone that I can identify with and I can relate to. And it's hard to imagine you can overcome odds and do certain things until you see someone sort of in your position that it helps you realize that it's possible. And so just the fact that, you were able to start writing me and I was able to communicate with you, it helped me realize just how important it is to not be the best wrestler of all time, because I'm far from that. I think I've really grown as a performer over the years, but I think the more important part of my journey as a performer is to communicate with individuals like you, create these friendships and these relationships, and just be a positive role model and help people endure the hardest of times. So, I mean, there's so much I want to talk about today with you guys, but I mean, I can't thank the both of you enough for opening my eyes and helping me to see that.
Wow.
What a moment.
Yeah, my eyes are still wet. I do remember. I think because I worked in the school, but because I grew up as a wrestling fan, so there was that initial excitement of, hey, we're going to communicate with a real life wrestler in America. And then the education side of my brain was, but we need to practice your handwriting, Dean. So we need to write this and send it through the post. And I do remember getting the replies and just being so blown away with your generosity and your kindness, and the fact that you would take your time out of your day to just talk to a couple of schmucks like us in Bristol.
But you guys are schmucks, man. See, we all see ourselves in a certain light because of maybe being humble, but also some of the things we've been through in our life, or we think that maybe to most people we're unimportant. And I think, I don't know, I think some people think that you have to be in the public eye to be considered anything of relevance. But I mean, I think it's the impact you make on the people that you meet along your journey determines who you should see yourself as and how important you are. I mean, without anyone telling you, whoever's listening to the podcast right now, they should know that they're important in their own way and that they're on this earth for a reason, even if they don't have someone telling them that. But I believe in the importance of surrounding yourself with a positive social circle. If you want to create a more positive mindset, you should be around those that help you create that mindset and maintain it. And I just think that you should understand that, when we leave this world, I don't know your guys' beliefs, and I'm not going to go into a big rambling about that. But if there isn't an afterlife, if there isn't somewhere we go when we pass away, then maybe the only true afterlife are the memories we leave behind and the people that we impact. And I've never been under.
I take me this podcast to school. Ooh.
Yeah.
You're dedicating this podcast to Scott Hall.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, Scott Hall made such a positive impact on so many people's lives, and he was one of the guys that I grew up idolizing as a kid. And it's like I met Scott briefly a couple times, so we didn't have like this big interaction. But I'm sure Scott didn't realize even when he was alive how many people that he influenced without ever really meeting them, right? But I think the way we leave this world, the impact that we leave on this world, and the people that we interact with, whether we meet them or not, I think that's the true afterlife when we're gone here. And so everybody's important, and I know that no matter where I go in my life, I will always remember the positive impact that you guys left on me and helping me see probably the most important part of my journey as a wrestler, and that being to help others understand that they can endure any obstacles and that they are important no matter what.
Absolutely.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
He's becoming a presenter.
Yeah, ask away.
With your best friend in NXT for so many years, did you ever feel you ever go to that place?
With my best friend in NXT, did I ever feel like I would go there? Well, I wanted to be there with Johnny Gargano, who you're referring to. And there was actually some talk that I think I've touched on a little bit on my podcast, Iron on Wrestling. I kind of held it inside for a while. Yes, there, Rowan wearing the T-shirt. Right before, I want to say, I don't think it was before the pandemic. It was about a year ago now, though. There was talk about me potentially doing something with WWE because it had always been sort of a long shot, and as time had went on, it was something that I sort of pushed to the back of my mind. Even though Johnny was there for like 5 years, I wasn't gonna like beg him to help me get a job. But something happened where Ember Moon was talking to Sarah Del Rey, who of course helps train backstage at NXT at the Performance Center. And my name came up about my angle, which I'm sure you remember from social media, Veda Scott and myself in the match that we had back in the day, which was absurd. Yes. And that got brought up. And then Sarah happened to ask Candice LeRae, who was nearby, what's Greg up to? Does he still wrestle? Yeah. And that's Johnny's wife. And so Sarah said, what is Greg up to? Does he still wrestle? And she said, yeah, he wrestles all the time. And Sarah said, we could use someone like him here. And it was the night, I think it was night of or the night after Candice won the NXT tag titles. I wrote her just to say congratulations. And her reply was short. It just said, thanks. Sarah Del Rey was asking about you. And I was like, wait, what? like it was like, I was like, why are we making this about me all of a sudden? Right. And so basically, I guess long story short, Candice started telling me that they were going to push for me. Sarah told Candice and Johnny both that she was going to push for me. And she was going to go to Matt Bloom, who used to be A-Train in Prince Albert, who runs the Performance Center. Yes. And a couple weeks go by, Matt Bloom reached out to me. We started email together, and I had to write a long email to him introducing myself and telling him what I could bring to the table, not only as a wrestler, but perhaps maybe a writer or a producer, because we didn't know what the job was that they wanted for me, but they wanted me to pitch any type of avenue in which I can get my foot in the door. And Matt Bloom wrote me back and he said, thank you for telling me all that. Looking forward to continue communication with you. And then I want to say it was a couple of days later, they started the mass firings in WWE and letting go just a large number of names. And then I didn't hear anything. And I wrote another email. I wrote a month go by, and I wrote another email, and I heard nothing again. And I haven't heard anything since. But got to, change your perspective on things and look at the positive. Had I gotten hired, I probably would have immediately got fired. So I would have uprooted my whole life and moved from Ohio, to Florida for my dream. And I would have had it for, few weeks, few months, and then I would have just got fired, and I would have been back in the same position. But everything worked out for the best. And, for a long time, being friends with a guy like Johnny Gargano, I would compare myself to him, even when I would deny that I was doing it. And, you can't be upset about what other people have. When I saw Johnny win the NXT championship in New York, and I got to sit front row, and after he wins the belt, he comes out to the crowd and he gives me a hug. He hugs me on WWE pay-per-view. Like, that's cool. But one of the best moments of my career, in my life, was just seeing him win that belt, because I knew all the struggles that he went through. And that's more important than, me having a job with him. I would love to wrestle him in WWE. I mean, obviously he's not there right now. That would be like a dream come true. But I'm just so happy for him, and I'm happy that I can be a small part of his story, and that's what I'm thankful for. That's a long rambling. I know I went off course there, Dean. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm glad you're my laptop. Can't get there one time.
Wrestling's been a big part of your life ever since you were growing up, and you kind of touched on similarities with Dean's feelings growing up and your feelings growing up. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking to us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up.
Yeah, it was difficult. Obviously, being born with cerebral palsy was a challenge. I don't have it, as severe as Dean physically, but it's still noticeable. It's most noticeable in my right arm, hand, and fingers. So it I struggle with the mobility. Yes, we same side, and it's I don't know. It was always a challenging fit physically. It didn't really bother me until I entered school, because kids are cruel. They don't know any better, and so they make fun of things they don't understand. So I got hit with all the stereotypical nicknames of the time, and that really eats at you. It chips away at you. And I didn't have the best home life. And honestly, cerebral palsy was very challenging for me, but I don't know if anything was as challenging as the mental toll that the situation with my parents at home that took on me. I had to see my parents not only, verbally abuse each other, but physically. I was physically abused at times. I just did a podcast where I talked about my relationship with my dad, that sometimes it could be strained. And I know he dislikes himself strongly for some of the things that he did as a kid, and I forgive him for that. And I know he doesn't like me sharing these things sometimes about what happened, in my personal life. But I think being transparent, sharing these things, is a way to help myself heal. And I don't know, just like there were times as a kid when, because my foot walks a little bit flatter on the right side because of CP, I sort of drag it. There'd be times where my dad would yell at me to pick up my goddamn feet, and I would try, but I couldn't, and there was times where, as a joke, I think he thought it was funny. He would call me some of the same names that I heard in school. I don't think he realized that I was being called those names, but it hurt, coming from, your dad. And so it's kind of crazy when you're in these situations, these physical situations, these mental situations. I don't know if you really understand how incredibly challenging they are, especially when you're young, until you're out of that situation, and you get older, you can look back in hindsight. Because I was just talking to someone about this recently. I don't know if I could have gotten through the things that I got through if it happened today. Like the times where my mom was getting us evicted from houses, or she wasn't paying the water bill, so we had no running water, or she didn't pay the electricity bill, so no electricity, and it would be wintertime, and the the Cleveland winters can get very cold here, and the heat would be off, and we would all cuddle up in one room, what was supposed to be a dining room, but it was made into a bedroom, and they would put a blanket up on the doorway to try to keep the heat in, and we would all just kind of, me and my brother and my mom would just cuddle up in this one room for warmth. It's absurd that a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old child had to go through with that, but I did. So these things were incredibly difficult. Communicating with girls was not the easiest thing in the world. And on top of all this, I am absolutely obsessed with pro wrestling, which, at various times before the Attitude Era, it was not cool to be a wrestling fan. And sometimes it's still not cool to be a wrestling fan, but I think people don't know any better. They don't know what they're missing out on. But when you combine all that, my anxiety and my depression was very, very high. And there were times, much like Dean, where I thought perhaps maybe it would be better off if I wasn't in this world. Yeah. I would wish that maybe I wasn't born.
That was a question I was going to say to you, Greg, because part of Feel No Shame is about being aware of suicide. And you touched upon it there, but if you can elaborate on how suicide potentially has touched your life in any way at all, that would be really beneficial to hear. If you can, but you don't have to, but it's up to you. It's a question I'm throwing out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've never had someone very close to me take their life. I myself have thought about it. I've never attempted anything like that. But man, there was times when, you would just, me personally, I would hope to myself, boy, I'm walking to school. Maybe if a car just, it's raining real bad and a car just slides off the road, maybe this could, this could just take me out. That would be great, and I wouldn't have to deal with this misery anymore. And I don't hate that I had those thoughts. I don't like that I had them, but it's like, I think I'm proud that I was able to overcome that, because I think that's, especially with young kids, who are going through this, I think when you're dealing with this at all ends, at home, at school, or one of the two, you think that there's no end in sight, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But as someone that went through that long, long tunnel and searched desperately for the light, I can tell you that if you take the right paths and you stay the course, that eventually you can find that light. But what it comes down to is, at some point, you really have to change your perspective on things. And I sort of hate to say that, when you say that something's wrong and people say, well, it could be worse. I mean, I guess, but I feel like that's sort of discounting the way that person who's talking about how they feels in that moment, right? But it's like, as you travel this path in life and we encounter these overwhelming experiences, I think if you change your perspective, the world shifts around you. Like I couldn't control that I had cerebral palsy, and then I still have cerebral palsy. I can't control that my parents weren't the most positive role models or best influences in my life. But what I can control is my actions and the way that I react to the things that are happening to me. And wrestling, even though it was nerdy to enjoy it sometimes, it kept my mind positive and at ease. And even when I wasn't trying to be a wrestler, just the creativity and the drama behind it, like you touched on, Dean, it really drew me in and helped me escape from this world at times. And I desperately wanted to be a part of it, because I thought that would be the best way that I could contribute and keep my mental sanity. And, you fast forward, now I'm doing this thing. I'm in the business. Didn't think it would be as a wrestler, but here I am. You don't know what you can do if you really just put your mind to it and try, and you don't listen to the doubters and the haters and the people that feed you these lies, because most people that try to drag down your dreams are those that never even tried to pursue those in the first place. Like my parents, they just think it's unrealistic because they didn't do what they wanted to do. But I think I'm living proof that it's indeed possible. I don't know if I answered the question there. I ramble a lot, and I really apologize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's absolute gold. And we always try and normalize and desensationalize.
Take away the stigma.
Yeah, suicidal thoughts for anybody. And so far, everybody that we've listened to, when they've explained their story and then gone on to say, and then I felt suicidal, it kind of makes sense in that the brain is designed to escape pain in any way possible. And if you're going through pain at home, you're going through pain at school, you're going through pain trapped in your own body, I suppose, as a kid, then the kind of logical thing the brain would do is say, okay, we can't escape the shit, so let's just escape life. And thank goodness the two of you didn't do that and grew to love your strengths. And it sounds like wrestling was a big part of you escaping these feelings. And I was going to ask you actually, because in wrestling there's faces, baby faces and heels, and so usually the faces are the good guys, the heels are the bad guys, and so you can escape this very complex grey world we live in and go to a world where usually the good guys win the title in the end, get the girl, whatever the objective is, and the bad guys will end up with poop on their face sometimes, or at least lying face back down on the mat staring at the lights.
Yeah.
And
Or in Gregory's face, some more poison one time.
in Gregory's case,
I've had poop on my face before.
Poison.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, Dean, but there's one time where I wrestled a guy by the name of Space Monkey, and he flung poop all over my face. It was pretty disgusting. It wasn't actually poop, spoiler, but it was a very gross spot that not many people enjoyed. I thought it was hilarious, though.
I was going to ask you, when you portray a heel, and so when you go out as the bad guy night after night, does that ever impact upon how you see yourself? Obviously, you'll attract more boos from the crowd and criticism from the crowd. Does any of that ever get in?
It depends, I guess, how it's directed, because you could tell the difference between someone who's in on the show and someone that's just being a complete jerk.
Yeah.
I try not to let it get in. I think especially, we talk about the way the crowd might react in person, and you talk about, I guess, social media is a very important thing too, because it's hard to avoid as a person in the public eye, the scrutiny on social media, but also when we talk about younger kids, this generation that go to school, they're trying to escape bullies. They go on social media and the bullies are still there. Social media can be just incredibly toxic, right? And so there are times at shows and on social media where it does get to me. I mean, I think social media is a perfect example of the segue. Like, just imagine, I don't know, you're in real life somewhere and you have two people coming up to you and having a great conversation and everything's good. And then you have one person come into that conversation who just starts swearing at you and is belligerent. And it's like, I don't know, if it's overwhelming, if it's happening repeatedly, how long can you ignore that before you have to say something? Like, maybe it's not always the right thing to do. I mean, the way you verbalize it is very important, right? I'm not saying create a confrontation, but it's like, some of it could just be, you're getting pounded over and over and over again. It's rough, but more times than not, the better answer is to ignore. But yeah, I mean,
I was thinking of something else then when you were saying pounded over and over.
Pounded over and over and over again. Just pounded it out, right? Okay. Dude, you sick man. How dare you? That's my bit, not yours. Okay. Like that, doing that and laughing at 69 jokes. Okay. So come on. But it can get in, but I think for me, I'm very fortunate in the sense that a lot of the feelings, the anger that I've held inside for a long time, it didn't make any sense for me to be a bad guy on paper. But I knew, based on my own personal experiences, that when I was given the opportunity to be a bad guy, I knew exactly how I was going to make that work. And I was going to take everything that was inspiring about the character and I was going to flip it on people. Instead of being humble for being an inspiration, I wanted to let them know that, yeah, I am an inspiration. And I've accomplished more with only one fully functional arm than you will ever do. Like you're not capable of it. Also, I'm looked at as this man technically with brain damage. Why is it that I'm so much more incredibly smart than you? I mean, that doesn't really make any sense, does it? And so when you flip the character, you can make people genuinely hate you. And I think most people are in on the joke. Some people aren't. But also you want people that aren't going to be in on the joke, because I think that's the magic of wrestling, is making them believe in that moment that even if you are this person with a disability who, to the public, I think the public genuinely, when they don't take the time to learn something about someone with a disability, they just want to feel sorry for them. I think in that moment, you can understand that someone who is different than you has the ability not only to be loved, but hated, and has the same emotions as anybody else. And even if they have a disability, they can also be an asshole too. And I think Gregory Iron as a bad guy has always been a great reminder of that. And I would argue that since becoming a bad guy in most places, I might say that I'm a better bad guy than a good guy. But also, I think experimenting with different characters and being a bad guy helps add layers to your persona. I think it's no different than the people that we meet in our lives. When we meet someone, we create a friendship or we have a relationship, whether that ends good or bad. I think we take things from those relationships, and then when we move on, we add that layer to our persona of who we are. And I think I've done that as a wrestling character. And the smart aleck things that I was able to say as Gregory Iron, the bad guy, I was able to, when I switched over to Gregory Iron, the good guy, understand how to take those experiences and still be a smart aleck, but do it in a way that suits me as a babyface, if that makes sense. Because the Gregory Iron that was a babyface before being a bad guy didn't understand how to do that and parlay my sense of humor. What's that?
Like Hogan in the 90s.
Like Hulk Hogan.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's you add layers to who you are with every interaction that you have, and it makes you a more well-rounded character. But also, based on my experiences in wrestling, it's made me a more well-rounded person. And some of the best people in my life, like you guys, have entered my life because of pro wrestling, and it's helped me grow into just a better human. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't take the chance to enter this crazy world of professional wrestling. And I mean, I don't get to talk to you guys right now. I'm doing something else with my day, and I'm not a wrestler, and I'm probably just complacent with my life. If I would have listened to the people that told me that doing this wasn't possible, it's really changed my life for the best. And I couldn't imagine things being any different.
That's amazing. And that leads me to technically my final question for you, Greg. But and I say it to all the people that we interview, if you right now could go back in a time machine to your younger self, specifically at an age that you think was a turning point, what would you say to yourself?
Boy, that's such a...
It's a very, very open-ended one. It's a very open-ended question, but see where you could just see how it goes.
I think the simple thing to tell young Greg Smith would be hang on and keep going, because I know that little Greg isn't going to listen to old Gregory Iron, because like little things like some of the music I listen to now, like I listen to a lot of emo stuff and a lot of acoustic music. I know young Greg would make fun of me so bad because all he was into was like metal and new metal and hard rock. And he's like, what's wrong with you, man? So I know that going back in time, even though he would be baffled by the idea of time travel, he would not listen to Greg. He wouldn't believe it. Maybe something would sink in from those few words, but he would still go about doing the things he was going to do and make those same mistakes because, I don't know, sometimes you got to put your hand on the stove while it's hot and get burned, even though your parents tell you it's going to burn you, right? So I think like part of life is making mistakes and living through it and moving on. Like currently I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend, Nicole. We've been together for over a year. And man, she's the best thing that has ever happened to me. And there have been times where I've said out loud to you, man, where were you 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And then I stop myself and I go, no, wait. I'm so happy that I found you now. Because if I would have found you even 3 or 4 years ago, I would have done something to screw that up. Like every experience that I have in my life, whether it be bad or good, has led me to this moment where I found this incredible person that in this moment is absolutely perfect for me. And so if I don't make all these mistakes, I don't meet her, and I'm not in the situation I'm in now. So old Greg is going to tell young Greg, but young Greg's not going to listen. He's going to figure it out on his own. But maybe those words would resonate with him a little bit, but probably not much.
Well, life's a journey and you have to live it. But no, wow.
That's exactly what it used to be like talking to Dean. He didn't believe me about anything.
Look at him now. Look at him now.
Dean, do you have any more questions?
I've got thousands, but I do a 3-hour podcast.
You might need the one magic question. What do you most want to know before we say goodbye?
Tough one. Real tough
Why
one.
are you going to the UK?
Yeah.
When am I coming to the UK? Man, I don't know, because there have been a handful of times where promoters have reached out to me from the UK, and then everything fell through. In fact, of course, the last one was right before the pandemic. There was a young man who was going to bring me out there, and I was getting ready to book a bunch of shows out there. There's even an app that they use in the UK for indie shows so that you can line up a bunch of bookings. And so I had downloaded that app, and I was getting ready to go. I want to say this would have been April of 2020 that it was going to happen, April or May. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and then that fell through, and communication with this dude now has been sporadic. So I don't know. I'm in better spot than I've ever been financially, both through wrestling and the podcast. And I work a real job that I had to get after the pandemic. And so I have a lot of money saved. So it has crossed my mind from time to time to maybe make an investment myself in coming to the UK and getting a bunch of bookings and making all my money back and then some. But I can't make any promises, though. But it's something, it's on my bucket list of things to do, because if there's one place I've wanted to experience, it's the UK. So I want to make that happen at some point.
And Dean,
Thank you, Greg.
if I find out that he's coming over before you, I'm not going to tell you, so that it can be another surprise, because the face that you pulled when you saw him on the podcast was one of the best things I've ever seen. It's the happiest I've ever seen anybody. Thank you so much, guys, for agreeing to be on here, and thank you for talking to us.
Sorry about my dogs, by the way, if you heard them.
It's fine. I thought for sure that my cat was going to start whining in the background as soon as this got unmuted. He's been quiet the whole time. And I thought for sure, yep, it's just going to start going, and I was going to have to strangle it, but I'm glad that didn't happen. And I know I've thanked you guys a bunch of times, but I really can't thank all three of you enough for making this happen, because this was a long time coming.
Thank you.
I have one more thing. One more thing.
Go for it.
For guys in the middle, if makeup blow up on social media.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you're going to have to repeat that. I heard social media.
It may blow up.
Oh, this
This may blow up on social media. We will be mega stars. We won't know ourselves. Our egos will get out of hand.
dripping in light.
In AEW.
Well,
If it blows up, I will not be shocked. And like I said, this was 10 years in the making, and maybe we can do this more often. And Dean, I know that I have inspired you, but I just want to let you know how much you've inspired me, and just you being like my first true fan that I can see myself in, with the same disability, and your courage, the amount of things that you overcame in your life, and hearing your story, it's incredible. And I am happy to not only be an inspiration to you, but to have you as an inspiration for me, and to be able to call you a friend. So thank you for that, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. I don't get a cut of his podcast on my YouTube.
Yeah, you can have a copy to put on your YouTube.
Absolutely.
You've probably got more fans than us.
You probably have. But for those that want to follow Greg, for the listeners and for the viewers, Iron On Wrestling Podcast. Plug it. Go for it, Greg. Before we go, plug it.
Yeah, so you can find myself on social media at Gregory Iron on Twitter, at Gregory_Iron on Instagram. I'm on Facebook too if you search me. And if you want to listen to my podcast, Iron on Wrestling, it drops every Wednesday at midnight. And it's absurd at times. It's funny, but it can be serious too. And we have a lot of guests from the wrestling world, some not from the wrestling world. And you see a different side of Gregory Iron podcast. Yeah, it's I think it's entertaining, but I'm a little biased. And you can find that on iTunes or wherever you download podcasts. If you want to follow that on social media, you find it at Iron on Wrestling. And of course, you can search the Patreon and support there, patreon.com/Iron on Wrestling, where you can get
I really want to do
content.
that.
You're getting heckled.
What's that? You little heckler?
I think he was
I
called.
really want to do that.
He said, come to the UK and I'll put you on the ground. Dean, you can't say these things.
What the heck? Wow.
Oh, you want to kick his kid? No.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I believe you, because when I popped in this room, you were crying. So I can't imagine how many tears you would shed if I was in person.
Oh,
I have to get fucking.
Handicap parking. That's right. Gregory Iron versus the one-hand lover. Don't you forget that was your nickname, okay? And you on me about saying taking a pounding. One-hand lover. What a questionable name. All right.
I think that was a name you gave yourself once, Dean. You've got a good memory.
Hey, that's brilliant.
Well, I'm looking can be Alexa Bliss.
Next, Alexa Bliss. Okay, we're done with Greg. Greg, 10 years in the middle. Now we're done. We move on to the next. Well, we'll see. We can definitely do this again sometime. But thank you so much, guys, and we'll do this again.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Feel No Shame. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you feel like you need to speak to anybody after listening to this podcast, or at any time, any day, please call the Samaritans on 116-123. Alternatively, please check out the other support services that we recommend at the end of our YouTube videos. Music is by Adobe. I've been Rowan Long with Alan Aldersley Byrne. Thank you for listening, and join us next time for more of the same.